Today, breaking news. Washington has just been shaken to its core by a political detonation that insiders are already calling the most dangerous Republican civil war in modern American history. The power struggle between Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell has exploded into the open, and tonight the fallout is rippling from Capitol Hill to Wall Street, from conservative media studios to suburban living rooms across the United States. Sources inside the Senate describe emergency phone calls, doors slammed inside leadership offices, and staffers scrambling as if a constitutional crisis is unfolding in real time. What began as simmering tension has now erupted into a full-scale confrontation over the future of the Republican Party, the control of Congress, and potentially the direction of the next presidential election. This is not a policy disagreement. This is a power war. Just hours ago, allies of Donald Trump signaled that the former president is prepared to escalate his campaign against Senate leadership in a way that could fracture Republican unity heading into a high-stakes election cycle. Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell, long known for his calculated silence and ice-cold political discipline, has reportedly authorized behind-the-scenes maneuvers designed to reassert institutional control over a party increasingly driven by populist energy. One senior Republican aide described the mood bluntly: "This is a fight for the soul and the machinery of the GOP." To understand how we arrived at this explosive moment, you have to go back years to the uneasy alliance forged during Trump's presidency. Publicly, the relationship between Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell often appeared transactional but functional. Privately, according to former staffers, it was layered with distrust. McConnell, the architect of Senate Republican strategy, prioritized judicial confirmations and legislative leverage. Trump prioritized loyalty, media dominance, and direct communication with his base. The two men needed each other. They never fully trusted each other. And now that fragile arrangement has shattered. In a closed-door meeting late last night, according to two individuals briefed on the discussion, Trump advisors debated a coordinated effort to pressure Senate Republicans to break from McConnell's leadership. One proposal allegedly floated was to endorse primary challengers against sitting Republican senators perceived as aligned with McConnell's institutional approach rather than Trump's populist agenda. The room, sources say, was tense. Phones were placed face down. Staffers were instructed to avoid leaks. And yet, by dawn, word had spread across Washington that something major was coming. On the other side of the Capitol, Mitch McConnell's office reportedly convened senior strategists and campaign operatives. According to an insider familiar with the call, the message was clear: contain the damage, prevent a cascade of defections, and protect vulnerable incumbents. McConnell's network of donors, long one of the most powerful fundraising machines in American politics, was activated almost immediately. One prominent GOP donor, speaking anonymously, admitted, "If this turns into open warfare, the financial consequences could be enormous." Before we go further, make sure you subscribe and stay with this story, because what is unfolding right now could redefine the Republican Party for a generation. The clash is not merely personal, it is philosophical. Donald Trump commands a massive grassroots base energized by anti-establishment sentiment and cultural grievances. Mitch McConnell represents institutional conservatism, a belief in incremental strategy, committee leverage, and the slow grind of Senate procedure. For years, these two forces coexisted in uneasy alignment. But the post-presidency landscape changed the calculus. Trump's continued dominance over primary voters gave him influence beyond traditional party structures. McConnell's power, meanwhile, depends on Senate arithmetic and donor stability. According to individuals familiar with internal polling circulated among Republican leadership, Trump's approval among core GOP voters remains formidable. However, separate data suggests suburban swing voters express fatigue with internal party chaos. This data has reportedly intensified arguments inside McConnell's orbit that stability, not spectacle, must guide Senate strategy. Then came what insiders are calling the spark. In a recent media appearance, Trump sharply criticized Senate Republicans for what he described as weakness in negotiations over federal spending and border policy. Though he did not name McConnell directly, aides confirmed the comments were widely interpreted as aimed at Senate leadership. Within hours, conservative commentators aligned with Trump amplified the criticism, questioning whether McConnell's leadership was hindering the party's populist momentum. Behind the scenes, Senate allies of McConnell pushed back quietly. One senator reportedly told colleagues in a private lunch, "We can't run a governing majority based on cable news hits." That remark, once leaked, ignited fury among Trump loyalists who saw it as dismissive of grassroots energy. Social media erupted. Hashtags supporting Trump trended among conservative activists, while institutional Republicans warned of electoral backlash if internal divisions continued to escalate. Political analysts began drawing comparisons to previous intra-party conflicts, but many agreed this one feels different. The stakes are higher, the margins in Congress are thinner, and the next election cycle looms like a ticking clock. As the day progressed, another twist emerged. A leaked memo, allegedly circulated among Senate campaign committees aligned with McConnell, emphasized the need to prioritize electability metrics when allocating resources. Trump allies seized on the phrase, arguing it signaled an intent to sideline candidates perceived as too closely aligned with the former president. Within hours, conservative influencers framed the memo as proof of an internal establishment plot. Emergency conference calls multiplied. Staffers described a sense of controlled panic. Republican governors reportedly began reaching out to both camps, urging de-escalation. One governor's aide said bluntly, "If this spirals, Democrats will exploit every second of it." Public reaction has been intense. In town halls across battleground states, voters are asking whether the party can unite. Polling analysts note that while primary voters often reward ideological clarity, general election voters punish visible disarray. The tension between those realities is at the heart of this power war. Meanwhile, Democratic strategists are watching closely. Though largely silent publicly, sources say party operatives view the conflict as a potential opportunity. A senior Democratic aide reportedly commented off the record, "We're not interfering, we're just observing." But behind that calm exterior lies strategic calculation. Another dramatic development occurred when a longtime Republican strategist hinted on a podcast that certain donors are reconsidering commitments until the leadership question stabilizes. Financial markets briefly reacted to speculation about legislative gridlock affecting upcoming fiscal negotiations. Cable news panels filled with former officials debating whether this is a temporary flare-up or the beginning of a structural fracture. Inside Trump's circle, advisors reportedly argue that the Republican Party must embrace a combative posture against both Democrats and what they characterize as internal obstruction. They believe the base demands confrontation. In McConnell's orbit, strategists warn that constant confrontation risks alienating moderate voters, critical in swing states. Late this afternoon, reports surfaced of a tense phone call between intermediaries representing both camps. Details remain scarce, but sources describe raised voices and an abrupt ending. Neither side has confirmed the conversation publicly, fueling speculation about just how deep the rift runs. As night falls over Washington, the Capitol dome stands illuminated, but beneath its glow lies extraordinary uncertainty. Senate staffers are drafting contingency messaging, campaign committees are recalculating budgets, activist groups are mobilizing email lists. The machinery of American politics is grinding under strain. And here is where the constitutional implications begin to surface. If this conflict undermines party discipline in the Senate, key legislative priorities could stall. Budget negotiations, judicial confirmations, oversight hearings, all depend on coordinated leadership. A fractured conference risks paralysis at a moment when global tensions and domestic economic pressures demand coherence. Yet some Trump allies argue that disruption is precisely the point. They contend that institutional complacency has weakened the party's ability to confront what they describe as entrenched bureaucratic power. McConnell's defenders counter that governance requires stability and strategic patience. In private conversations, several Republican senators have reportedly expressed frustration at being caught in the crossfire. One lawmaker told colleagues, "We're trying to win seats, not referee a war." But neutrality may soon become impossible. Another leak late tonight suggests that Trump is considering a high-profile rally in a state represented by a senator closely aligned with McConnell. The symbolism would be unmistakable. The pressure would intensify. Before we continue deeper into this unfolding crisis, remember that history often turns on moments like this, moments when alliances collapse and new power structures emerge. Stay with this coverage because what happens next could determine not just party leadership, but national governance. Strategists are already mapping potential scenarios. If Trump successfully pressures senators to distance themselves from McConnell, leadership dynamics inside the Senate could shift dramatically. If McConnell consolidates support among incumbents and donors, Trump's influence over Senate mechanics could face limits. Either outcome carries risk. What makes this confrontation especially volatile is the personal dimension. Both men are seasoned political operators. Both have endured criticism and controversy. Neither is known for retreat when challenged publicly. Allies describe Trump as energized by conflict. McConnell, by contrast, is described as resolute, preferring quiet endurance over public theatrics. The broader Republican electorate now finds itself witnessing an internal referendum on identity. Is the party primarily a vehicle for populist insurgency or an institutional apparatus focused on legislative outcomes? The answer may emerge not through speeches, but through primary battles, fundraising totals, and the outcome of Senate votes in the coming months. As we move deeper into the night, new whispers circulate that additional internal documents may surface, potentially revealing further strategic divisions. Communications teams on both sides are reportedly preparing rapid response plans. Political reporters are refreshing inboxes, anticipating the next leak. This is no longer a background tension. It is an active power war unfolding before the nation's eyes. And as America watches, one question hangs in the air with growing intensity. Who will ultimately command the direction of the Republican Party? The populist force embodied by Donald Trump, or the institutional command structure represented by Mitch McConnell? Because tonight in Washington, the tremors are still spreading, and the aftershocks may only be beginning. The tension inside the Capitol intensified just after sunrise when word spread that a group of Republican senators had quietly gathered in a private conference room away from cameras and staff. According to two sources familiar with the meeting, the mood was uneasy, almost funereal. No official agenda was circulated, but everyone in that room understood the unspoken purpose: survival. Some lawmakers fear primary challenges backed by Donald Trump. Others fear losing donor networks aligned with Mitch McConnell. Every political calculation now carries personal risk. Outside that closed door, reporters clustered in hallways, sensing instability. One veteran Capitol Hill journalist described the atmosphere as leadership limbo. Staffers moved quickly between offices carrying folders marked confidential. Phones buzzed nonstop. One Senate aide reportedly whispered, "This feels like the beginning of something we can't control." Meanwhile, Trump allies accelerated their offensive. A draft endorsement list began circulating among political operatives late this morning, outlining potential primary challengers in states where senators are seen as closely tied to McConnell's institutional strategy. Though unofficial, the document sent a shockwave through Washington. Several incumbents immediately reached out to donors seeking reassurance. One campaign finance consultant admitted, "When you see your name even rumored on that list, you don't sleep." McConnell's team responded with discipline. According to insiders, he held a strategy session with senior staff and key committee allies, emphasizing calm and unity. A source described McConnell as characteristically composed, reminding colleagues that political storms often burn hot but brief. Yet even within his inner circle, concern is growing that this confrontation could redefine internal Senate politics. The financial dimension of this war cannot be overstated. Super PACs aligned with both factions are reportedly preparing contingency advertising strategies. One Republican donor class meeting held via encrypted video call reportedly turned tense when participants debated whether continued infighting might jeopardize Senate control. A major donor allegedly remarked, "If this escalates, we're funding chaos." That quote, once leaked, circulated rapidly, among political media circles. On social media, grassroots activists are framing the conflict in existential terms. Pro-Trump voices argue that entrenched leadership has failed to deliver transformative change. Institutional conservatives counter that durable majorities require strategic compromise and message discipline. The online discourse has become so heated that several Republican lawmakers have temporarily restricted comments on their accounts. Behind the spectacle lies a deeper strategic conflict over the next presidential election cycle. Trump's advisors reportedly believe that a Senate conference fully aligned with his populist vision would amplify campaign messaging and solidify turnout among loyal voters. McConnell's allies, however, argue that Senate races in swing states require nuanced positioning that may not align perfectly with national rhetoric. Another twist emerged this afternoon when a conservative policy group released internal polling data suggesting that Republican voters remain divided over leadership direction. While Trump maintains intense loyalty among his base, a significant segment of respondents expressed concern about prolonged intra-party conflict. Analysts note that this split could shape primary dynamics in unpredictable ways. Before we go further, take a moment to subscribe and stay engaged, because these developments are unfolding in real time and the next move could shift everything. Inside Washington's lobbying community, uncertainty has triggered a wave of recalculations. Corporate political action committees are reportedly reassessing contributions, wary of aligning too visibly with either faction. One lobbyist confided anonymously, "We don't know who will control committee chairs in 6 months. Legislative priorities on energy, defense spending, and regulatory reform now sit under a cloud of unpredictability." As we move deeper into the night, new whispers circulate that additional internal documents may surface, potentially revealing further strategic divisions. Communications teams on both sides are reportedly preparing rapid response plans. Political reporters are refreshing inboxes, anticipating the next leak. This is no longer a background tension. It is an active power war unfolding before the nation's eyes. And as America watches, one question hangs in the air with growing intensity. Who will ultimately command the direction of the Republican Party? The populist force embodied by Donald Trump, or the institutional command structure represented by Mitch McConnell? Because tonight in Washington, the tremors are still spreading, and the aftershocks may only be beginning.